The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and what a pleasure it is to follow that happy, that happy member. Members opposite will remember the days in their first year of this House where the air was fresh and they were tiptoeing through the tulips using words like leadership with gay abandon, and no matter that Judith Collins was sitting right in front of him, gnashing her teeth, thinking, don't say it too often, Sonny Jim, you'll be a dead man. But apart from that, at some point it's going to dawn on members opposite, one is tempted to say these dudes, that government is finite. That we are only 1 year from swapping sides in the House. And then we'll see how positive the chipper Mr. Muller really feels. And he's right about one thing, colleagues. Don't get too excited. These members are just so excited about being opposition because they'll actually get to give speeches in the House. Rather than, I move that the question be now put. Imagine having sweated so hard to get into the place and the whips tell them, it's your big moment, Todd. I know you used to work in the Prime Minister's office. Here, read this. I move that the question be now put. And sometimes they get an IQ test for John Key's cabinet. If you get it wrong more than twice, it's another year on the back benches. Which brings me to the member for Hamilton.
And back to the bill.
Now the member for Franklin's eyeing up the race. He's like a greyhound coming into the benches and he's off and running. I move that the question be now put, thinking that if he just says it fast enough, it'll truncate his on-ramp. But look, honestly, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to...
Members had about 300 metres of slack and he should get back to the bill.
Mr. Chairman, you're characteristically generous and correct, sir, and let me turn my attention to the amendments in Part 1, which amend the Official Information Act 1982 to exempt a tertiary educational institution which is a shareholder in a charter school from the provisions of the Official Information Act. Sum up the opposition's view of that clause. Why? If they're spending public money, which of course let's acknowledge that dozens of tertiary institutions are currently rotting from this hapless government and its useless Tertiary Education Commission, why would we not apply the Official Information Act? And I challenge the Minister to take a call. We're very privileged to have the current Minister of Education, for as long as it takes Nick Smith to want a new job other than housing, to be in the chair for this. And we would ask the Minister to explain the logic of why you would accept a provision that exempts from the Official Information Act an institution that is taking public money for the purpose of investing in a charter school. And as if that's not enough, they're also exempted from the provisions of the State Sector Act, which governs every other expenditure item on the public account, and as if that's not enough, the Ombudsman Act. Well, that's perhaps less serious because, let's face it, this government has been so single-mindedly adept at starving the Ombudsman's Office of resources that it takes about 2 years to get an OAA through, and that's just fine, according to Mr. Key's government, because democracy, it seems, is a nice-to-have, not always a must-have. At least as long as you can spin it out, the better it seems to be. Charter schools. Why do we have charter schools, colleagues? What reason could there possibly be? Could it be that we enjoy spending 5 times the amount of resource per pupil on a charter school pupil that we would on a regular state school pupil?
On an experiment.
And by a kind of national cabinet logic, if everybody was in a charter school, we could spend 5 times as much on every student. No. No, in fact, if charter schools represented just 20% of students, we would have doubled the education budget. But I don't think anybody's told Bill English that. Charter schools, sir, have been proven to be a failure. Yes. Whangaruru is the flag bearer for a desultory performance and a lack of clawback where public funds, which were clearly not being properly used, were enabled to be returned to the Crown. So I, sir, have been witnessing tertiary education institutions which are subject to the clauses of this bill, Mr. Chairman, routinely being caught out overstating student numbers, overstating course duration, using dodgy immigration agents, promising the world and ending up in real trouble. Now, why would we give them...
David Seymour.